And I don't know if you guys know the story of how uh, modern medicine in the United States began. Okay, so you do need this. You need the background of the story because I think it's a very easy statement for Europeans to make that oh, it's about profit. You have to understand why it's about profit because this is really, really important. So I'll lead you down a very quick history lesson. In the 1850s through 1911, John Rockefeller ran the biggest monopoly in the world. That monopoly was for kerosene and oil. It was called Standard Oil. Okay? When Teddy Roosevelt came in as president after one of our presidents were assassinated at the turn of the century, um, Teddy Roosevelt decided to go after John D. Rockefeller because he thought the things that he was doing were unfair and it was leading to undue political influence. So he had Congress take Standard Oil apart. So what did John D. Rockefeller do? He did something very, very wise as a profiteer. They broke his company up, but he told Congress back then that he would see to it that he would bankrupt the United States in some way for making this decision to ruin the business that he did. So when they broke Standard Oil up, some of the companies that you guys know now that exist from that are like Exxon, okay? But what you may not know is most of the companies in Big Pharma also come from that breakup. And what did he decide to do? He decided to take things from waste products from petroleum and kerosene and begin to make drugs. And how did he accomplish this task? Because you can imagine this was a Herculean task. So in the time this time of the United States, early 1910s and right before World War I, he hired a guy named Abraham Flexner who went and studied all the medical schools. Most of the medical schools in the United States followed the German model. And he basically realized that if he could eliminate vitalism and bring everything to reductionism, that he could control the curriculums of the medical schools so that young medical doctors would learn to use drugs instead of utilizing the natural things that are in nature. Okay? So he was successful in 1911 doing this, and he told all the medical schools at that time that if you don't follow the way we want to do things, we won't give you money. And as you know, Rockefeller was very, very wealthy from oil, so he could give fledgling medical schools quite a bit of money to do that. So the quid pro quo that he did, I'll give you money if you let me control your curriculum. So this is how Rockefeller gained control of the curriculums in medical school. And what did the curriculums in medical school do? They supported randomized controlled clinical trials. They supported the use of drugs over natural things in nature. And that went pedal to the metal all the way through. And the reason why this really hit with the American public, because like in 1937, when we had Alexander Fleming find penicillin, this fueled Big Pharma further to make more advances. People thought this was a wonderful thing. They didn't see the negative connotations to this system at the same. So you had two big decentralized, I should say, same time in America, same year, in fact. That's when we formed the central bank in the United States. Centralized moves in the U.S. Now, when Watson and Crick came out and discovered DNA, this was the perfect opportunity for Rockefeller and his foundation to use this information so that they came up with the idea that the randomized controlled clinical trial could be used to control methodology so that people would be fixated about genes. And this allowed Big Pharma to have more control of not only medicine, healthcare, but the way it was delivered. As things developed in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, they extended that view then to hospitals, then hospitals buying doctors' practices, and then eventually making everybody who's a doctor an employee. When I first came out of medical school, no doctors were employees. Now today, every doctor in the hospital or the body that gives you your United States, and I don't want to say every, but 99% are employees. So that's another way for centralization. Why? Because as you guys know in Europe, when the medical license tells you you have to take a COVID vaccine, you have to do it, otherwise you can't practice. You can't do this. But that's not the way medicine should be practiced. That's not the way science is supposed to be done. Science is about questioning. There is no consensus in science. Anything that's consensus is pseudoscientific.